Yes, we are in progress. We're back on Play It Forward. Today, we have Maxwell Klaiber, filmmaker, writer, director, producer. We're going to be talking about Job. Max, thank you for being on the show.
Of course, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. Max, please introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I am Maxwell Klaiber. I am a writer, director, producer, based in Los Angeles, currently originally from Redding, California. And yeah, the project is Job. Job is a 11 and a half minute one take that is kind of a modernized update of the biblical story of Job, concised down into what you can do in 11 and a half minutes. And it's literally a single shot tracking a single guy named Job as he experiences one of the worst days of his life. He's on a phone call with his mom, who's telling him that his dad's not doing well. His girlfriend breaks up with him. His roommate slash coworker lets him know that he's been fired and that he's moving out. And then he ends the short film ends with a really sad phone call, and it's a comedy. So that's the other fun thing about it is it's a little bit of a tragic comedy. But yeah, it was a joy to work on. A bunch of friends and I put it together. We shot it at a friend's house, did it in a couple hours, and yeah, it's been a journey with this film, which has been awesome. So yeah.
Thanks, Max. I appreciate that intro. I love the topic and the story and the themes that you're exploring with this. Um, the film starts with a quote from Job, the biblical recounting, and the quote is, "Therefore, I will not keep silent. I will speak out in the anguish of my spirit. I will complain in the bitterness of my soul." So
Mm,
that is how you start the film, and then the film, like you said, goes through a day in the life. And then 11 minutes, the guy finds out his girlfriend's gone. He steps in to polish it. He loses his job. His roommate leaves him. He's home. Threatened with, like Job is, with his wealth gone, his family's gone.
yeah,
Everyone is gone. And then at the end, he gets this phone call from his mother relating news about his father, and it's not good news, and he breaks down. So we
yeah,
leave Job very much where we start the film with the prologue and the quote from the actual Bible. Uh,
yeah,
and so that is the narrative arc, right? And that in between there, there's the people telling Job, the main character, to take accountability for his actions. There's some level of accountability that he is not seemingly taken with respect to what's happening around him. And so we're playing with these ideas of suffering that we
mm,
endure as humans, um, suffering that we feel, is it a punishment for God? What is the nature of suffering? Why are we suffering? Is it a punishment
mm,
for God? Have we done something wrong? Are we piling shit on our own shit pile, as
yeah,
the movie suggests and asks
yeah,
us? How much is that shit self-induced? How much is that shit part of the human experience?
yeah,
And
yeah.
we're dealing with that epicness of life. So where did this topic, the desire to write it, to direct it, to explore these themes, come from in your own life?
Yeah, great question. I was just feeling like that. I think I grew up incredibly religious. I grew up in a church background. So like biblical stories have always just been kind of embedded in my soul. Various stories, but the story of Job has always kind of like had a specific strong point in me. Um, so this short film I wrote recently after my grandfather had passed, and I had gotten a very similar phone call to the one that Job gets in the short film, from my mom. I was on it was a terrible time where he had been diagnosed with cancer and he was getting in and getting treatment. And I was getting flown out to the East Coast to do a job. And we had thought that by the time that I can finish the job, he was going to be out of surgery, the surgeries that he needed to get done, and that I can go home and spend some time with him before he had passed. He was estimated by the doctors to have like 6 months, a little bit more. And each day that I was on set, I would get a call from my mom or my grandma and saying like, now it's 2 months, now it's a week, and I'm like, do I go home now? and I would hear him on the other line like be like not okay. And it was like this kind of like really traumatic thing because like he was also the guy who like put it in me to be a filmmaker. So I'm on set doing the thing that I love, getting this disturbing phone call that he's like each day is going to be potentially his last. And similar to Job, I was like, things were happening on set and I was like struggling because you're dealing with personal stuff, but you're also trying to be creative and do the thing that you love and that you were hired to do. And then you get a phone call that just kind of like eviscerates kind of all that conversation. And then the end of Job has his buddy, played by Skylar Bible, serendipitous name, that kind of gives him hope, right? And kind of like, a little bit of camaraderie and a little bit of like, I'm going to be there for you, even in the midst of this turmoil. And thankfully, I had that too while I was on set when it happened. Um, which I thought was really important to put in there. So yeah, it was just kind of like months later, I was just really feeling like my personal life, my career, my everything, with my own health, my own stuff kind of going on, finances taking turns left and right, just like the thing of being human. And like my grandfather, we both had this thing that my mom calls like the Job mentality of like we very much self perpetuate our own suffering where it's like someone's out to get us, and my grandpa was just like that too. And so part of what you said earlier, which was so brilliant, um which was like that thank you for bringing up that feeling that Job is like, is this me, like, or is this God, is this someone out there playing a cruel trick on me? And then he has the people in his community going like, maybe, but like it also might be you, dude. Like you also need to hold yourself accountable. And this thing happens to all of us. And I think that the process of me writing the script was me playing both Job and the other people of like that, bringing it back to that thing of like we all suffer, we all kind of go through loss, we all kind of experience these things. It's almost kind of selfish to think that, we more than anyone else are getting picked on by a deity, just because in this moment we seem to be getting picked on more so than others, but like the pendulum swings each way. So yeah, it was a lot of just kind of cathartic, like rationalization of just like my own suffering and my own pain, and wanting to put it in something that I wanted it to relate to people in regards to when they can watch it, they can laugh at the absurdity of the things happening and hopefully feel really emotional about the deeper things that are happening as well, which was a really hard thing. But yeah, that to me is also maybe my Irish sensibilities of just like making light and humor out of like the deepest of tragedies. So, but yeah, that I hope that answers your question as
It
best as
does. It
possible.
does. And I love the what I'm hearing is you're wrestling with the idea of suffering and how much is suffering a part of being alive and human and
Yeah.
embedded in the nature of life and death and pain,
Mhm.
loss, and attachment and non-attachment, and how much is it a consequence of our action, behavior,
Mm.
thinking.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
the two there is there's a natural element to it, and then there's an element of, well, we do have some level of causality in the nature of our suffering. So it's almost teasing these two apart. There is pain, right? And pain is a part of the life process. It is unavoidable. There is
Mhm.
going to be great pain. And Job, in his moment, the quote that you took out is the moment where he breaks down, right? In
Yeah.
the biblical story, that is the moment where he breaks down and he's on his knees and he's saying, God, why me? God, I cannot remain silent any longer. I cannot
Yeah.
remain silent.
And
And
yeah.
in his breakdown, there is a breakthrough, an attach, a reaching, a conversation with God. Some may say a prayer.
Yeah.
There's a connection. There's a seeking. So in that breakdown, that critical moment, right? So there's pain, and then there is the how do we bear the unbearable? And that's in Job. There's a reaching out and
Yeah.
towards and faith. right? That's the
Mhm.
whole nature of the story, is this test of faith. And
Yes.
so that's the connective thread. And then there is our part, the human part of, well, what is, if there is pain, how do we react to it? Do we create more pain
Yeah.
in our own lives and others? And in an Eastern sense, they would call it karma. Do we
Yeah.
create more karmic debt,
Mhm.
or do we endure it with faith?
Yeah.
And so those are the meaning messages, uh, uh, choices that I see in the film. What about you?
I mean, you're right on it. I mean, I think specifically when you were talking about like karmic things, I think one of the problems that I was fearful of in regards to the writing of the story was like you lean so heavily into like a Christian monotheistic God deity that only a certain number of people believe, whether it's United States, worldwide, whatever country, culture you send this film to, you still want to make it universal in some way. Like, how can this still be a message and themes that people who have different faiths or even no faith in any sort of God or deity relate to this idea of everything that you literally just said, which is like at the end of the day, that core message, you're right, is like we're all gonna suffer. We're all gonna, like you said, and like Job said, put shit onto our respective shit piles. It's unavoidable. We will always it will happen at some point. What is our response? And Job's response is sadly in his moment to blame God, ask God why. He literally has the part where he like looks up to the sky and literally goes, "Why me, God?" And you have, and that's why I needed characters like Cece and like Eli in the thing, is to kind of you feel empathy for Job. You feel that thing of like, oh man, I've been there too. I understand it. And there is that thing of you need someone else in your ear kind of going like, hey, like, but like you also need to work on your stuff. Hurt people, right? That's the classic, saying that we all hear all the time. And Cece's kind of
Personally, I've
reminding,
not heard that.
oh, really? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I would say I growing up, I heard it all the time.
yeah, yeah,
Um,
great.
but yeah, hurt people, and
Yeah.
Cece's kind of reminding him of that, of saying like, I understand your suffering, I understand you're going through a lot with your dad, with your job, with all of these things. I was here in your life, and the way that you treated me in the midst of that suffering is now making me unavoidably add on to that. I don't want to be adding on to your pain by leaving you, but you're making me because of the decision you made in lieu and in light of your other suffering in your other areas, you know. And so it becomes like this, yeah, this cause and effect, this trickle down of like top suffering happens, whatever you want to name, whether in the story of Job it's his dad, but in anyone's life it can be whatever you want it to be. And how do you let those things trickle down into those other aspects of your life? Where do you cut the cord? Where do you tie the tourniquet? Where do you kind of like stop the bleeding, so to speak? Like, how does that look like? And for Job, he doesn't stop the bleeding. He kind of like keeps bleeding into everything and letting it affect everything, his job, his personal friendships, his, yeah, like you said, his finances, his relationships, everything starts to bleed. And sometimes people do that. I think people get to their literal breaking point. They don't tie the tourniquet, they let themselves bleed out. And sometimes that's the only way to kind of deal with, you know, changing. And I think that's what the ending of this film is hopefully it's like looking at it. And I don't know, it's hard to hear sometimes, and that was kind of on purpose, but like at the end when he's crying into the arms of Eli, you hear him saying, "I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." And it was really important to hear the line that Skylar, who plays Eli, says, which is, "It's okay, man. Like, we're gonna figure it out." And I think that was like the most human thing I can think of in regards to like what is another human gonna do to another human, even in the midst of fighting. How do we be there for each other in the time of suffering? Because sometimes it is going to take that village. It is going to take that community. It's going to take your friendships, the people in your life. So I wanted to end on like a sad but happy note where it's like, even though this terrible, terrible thing happened, there is still a glimmer of like a faith in humanity that like even in the midst of suffering, people can kind of like be there for each other. So I hope that answered a little bit of your question. But yeah, that was Yeah, I'm really glad you brought up that verse and specifically where in the Bible it comes from and alluded the biblical story of Job, because that was really difficult. Rereading Job, I was like, I know I want to start with a verse and I just want it to be perfectly aligned with what I think is at least this short film's version of what we're trying to glean from the story of Job. And that part was really important where it's like that crying out to God of like, I just want to complain right now. I think I don't want to sit, I don't want to bottle it up anymore. Like I just need to get out that I'm like not doing okay. And I really loved that part in the book. So yeah, to use that first, I kind of hope that it set the tone as much as possible for what everyone's about to see. So thank you for bringing that up.
Oh man, thank you. Thanks for sharing all that. That's the key. I really want to just kind of hone in on that key and that ending and that last part and that statement where the character in the film goes through that transition, that change where he stops blaming others and stops blaming God or that there's a cruel trick being played upon him, and he takes on an accountability through his own breakdown, through his own apology, through the acceptance of what is,
Yes.
and through reaching out to another person, how important it is to reach out for help, to reach out for that connection, to reach out for that hand to hold. You feel like there's no hand to hold, but you're not reaching for a hand to hold. And in that outreach and that cry of pain, there comes a response. There is a
Mhm.
connection. And I think that has a great meaning for all of us who are enduring suffering together.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's so funny. I bring up my co-director who helped co-direct this project with me, Jordan Moran. When I wrote the script, I gave it to him, and it was interesting because we both direct in our own life, whether together or separately. And he was there when I was getting the calls. He was one of my directors with me on set during the job I was getting when my grandpa passed. And so he was kind of like my Eli. He was kind of like the personal close friend that was like in my corner. And I remember when I sent him the script, I was just like, hey man, what do you think? I'm thinking this is like a one take. I'm thinking this is like a play. I'm thinking, tell him just kind of like technical things. Like, "Oh." And he like got back to me and he was like, we have to make this. Like I remember he was like, I don't know personally that thing that you went through because I didn't go through that same thing, but I know Eli, like I know that feeling of being in the midst and around suffering and how do you be present for the person going through it, you know? And I think that made him like that perfect collaborator on this project just because we're kind of getting both sides of it. You're getting the sufferer, I guess if you can say that, the person who went through the suffering, but you're also getting the perspective of like at both points in life, I think we're going to be two things. We're going to be the person suffering, and we're going to be the person called upon to answer the call of someone in their life suffering. And how do you be present? How do you show the quote unquote the ministry of presence to that person who's going through it? And I mean, it's hard to admit that I think all of us have failed and succeeded at doing that. I think there's people in our lives that we've done really, really well for, like kind of an Eli, so to speak. Like even though they kind of fight and tussle, like at the very end of it, he is
Mhm.
wrapped around him. And then I think other of us are more like Cece. And granted, Cece has different caveats of, relationship, not just friendship and stuff like that. But in the sense of like, I wanted to see both. Like I wanted to see someone leaving and someone staying in the midst of it, like just to get both of those perspectives. But yeah, I think we all do that. I think we all have succeeded really well at being there for someone. And I think we've all failed. And I think that's that thing of just like it just takes time and time and time to like figure out how to do that better, how to it's like the difference between compassion and empathy, like how do you put on this other person's shoes and kind of like ride with them in the mud, like how do you get into the trenches with them and put on their suffering with them. So yeah, it was really important for us to see that and to like to zoom out at the end, and the music is different, like the music at the end is like the music in the beginning, and like to hear that difference and stuff like that. So yeah, that it was a tough landing though, because it's immediately every time we watch it in like a screening or a festival or something like that, you get laughs all the way up until the phone call. Like they're laughing through the wrestling, they're laughing through him falling on the floor, they're laughing through him trying to get the phone out of the pocket, and then as soon as he says like, "Yeah, mom, what?" and there's silence, complete and total tone shift in the theater every single time, and everyone's like, "Oh, oh," and sticking that landing is really interesting, and seeing how people react to, are people going to be okay with this kind of like whiplash turn of like, yes, you can fight, yes, you can bicker and be mad at each other, but when it's needed at the turn of a dime, I still love you and I'm still your friend and we're still going to figure this out, so it was really, that was a really important ending to land, or be, hopefully we did it right. I hope that we did, but
Sounds
yeah,
like it
try
did.
to stick
Yeah.
that. So yeah, thank you.
It's great. I think it's really important. I'm glad you point that out. Um, those responses and completing the story, completing the message of what is there and how to show up for ourselves and others and our suffering. Now that
Mm,
you've done this movie, you've gone through this process in your life of, having a creative object, shaping that creative object based on your own human experience. And now you're reflecting on that object and you have it and you have the experience of creating the object as well. What have you learned? How have you changed? How has your relationship to suffering changed?
mm, that's a great question. I would say, I don't know. I think it's just being more aware and more involved and leading with like love. Like something that's really important for Jordan and I is to like really try and be aware of the vibe and the presence that we're creating on set, because you don't know who's coming to set and what personal baggage they're bringing and their pains that they're bringing. We don't know what happened in their personal life, whether they had a breakup, someone died. Like there's people are always constantly trying to present themselves to you at this place of work, and it's kind of like, how do I kind of like knock any sort of like guards down so that we can all kind of be here, and it's beyond the work, right? Like it's like, yes, we want to be here, we want to do a good job, we want to create great things, but like at the end of the day we're humans too. So like, how do I like leave an impact on these people, because this might be the only time we see each other on these sets and on these things, and you want to give these people an experience and let them know that like they had at least one set and one job that they like had a loving community of people wanting the best for them, both as a creative and as a person. And so this job specifically was like an example of just like people showing up for me. Like everyone who did this short film like did it as a favor, and like we shot it on my buddy's apartment balcony. And so it was just kind of like seeing a community of love who wanted to engage with me in a sort of kind of like cathartic short film about my grandfather. And they were all like, yeah, man, it felt like people were doing the ministry of presence to me. And that lesson is like, well, then I definitely going forward have to do that for them as well. Like, how can I be present in everyone's lives as well, and not just be thinking about job or a budget or how much money this thing's gonna make or all these things. It's like, no, this is a human experience that we're having on this set. Like, we should be leaving this set feeling like that we grew as people. Yeah, it would be great if we got better at our jobs and learn new skills. Obviously, those are super important things. But like, if you can walk away from a set and an experience with a group of people and be like, I have changed interior, my soul has changed, the way I think about things has changed, the way I think about the way that I think about how I should be treated has changed. That's the most important thing. I really think that like so much of what we do is wrapped in like shadiness and grossness and a lot of ego and a lot of pride and a lot of stubbornness. And I think it's really important to try and break that down and lead a little bit differently if you can, to try and impact people as much as possible. Using set as ministry, if you could even say that. I know that's very Christian and godly thing to say, but a different type of ministry where it's like, if something has been so corroded through the gross thing that this industry can be and creating stories can be. How do you just do things a little differently? So yeah, I would say that that's the biggest thing that I've learned is like specifically like how do I show up for those that need me on a set as a director? Like if that's the thing that I want to do and to continue to do as a storyteller and as a filmmaker, how do I get to be the most present version of myself with people outside of the work? Because I think that's just something a little differently, or doing something a little differently, I should say. So yeah, that's something I think that's immediately when you said that, I think that was the thing that I remember the most leaving that set was just kind of like the personal aspect of that set that felt really different than I've ever had. Like a lot of the times it's just like doing good work and being authentic and raw and real and getting to a truth. But for this one, there just felt like a real deep sincerity and like friendship made with people who were on this set that I was like, huh, I don't know if I've ever had that before. And I would like to continue doing that. That felt really nice. That felt really wonderful. It felt like we all became like Eli's for each other, where it was just like, oh, like there felt like this really weird kind of like arm around. And I don't know, like I think that's been a high I've been chasing since that set, right? Where it's like, how do I continue to kind of move the dial in that way where people feel like they can put their best foot forward personally, even involved with the work. They don't have to just show up and do their job. And I don't really know if I like these people, and I don't really know if I like my director, and I'm kind of just doing it for a gig. But it's like, no, like I can actually like be my most authentic self and present my most authentic self. And hopefully that spills out into the work. So yeah, I hope the best version of your question. Yeah.
That was best, man. Thank you. I mean, that was beautiful, man. Leading with love through presence is the faith that we all bring to one another. The faith that we represent that here's what's really real. This is the most real thing. This is the most important thing. And it is connection and love. And that turns everything around, that turns others on to faith, turns others on to love. And
Mm,
that strength to do that, to step in there and to be present in the face of the contrary
mm,
is the light, the
yeah.
mystery, the change, the beauty, the love. Leading with love, Maxwell
Yeah.
Klaiber, filmmaker, writer, director, producer. Thank you for being on the show, man. Thank you
No,
for
thank
the
you so much
truth.
for having me.
It was an honor. All right,
Yeah.
everybody, play it forward. We are out. And thank you, Scotty Felix,
Yes,
for
absolutely.
nominating Maxwell Kleiber. All right, peace out. All right,
Peace.
much love. Till next time.